Hi, this is Kunagus's here. You might notice that the following video will not have any proper commentary introduction and all that jazz. That was because this video and the previous video were both one very large video that we decided to cut into two. We didn't want to redo the commentary, so basically that'll explain the lack of proper introduction to the commentary, as well as the lack of proper I suppose you can say conclusion to the commentary in the last video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy. So yeah, I got my defences placed. So because of an army inside, you get all these little extra defences, like these caltrops. So they're good against cavalry, which, look what's coming. I have this wooden stakes, which is also good against cavalry and mounted troops. As you see, I've covered my areas up. My general's right here with his sacred band bodyguard. In fact, I think he's more of a governor, really. Because of DEI's whole governor thing. But yeah. So look. Enemy general charging here. Lankyrie.
The Lankyrie. What are their strengths?
Well, there seems to be a heavy shock cavalry. In fairness, DEI now, every cavalry unit that isn't ranged is classified as shock cavalry.
What do they specialise in?
Well, the idea is that shock cavalry are basically meant to be cavalry that charge in, do a lot of damage in a charge, and then get out. They're not meant to stay in prolonged combat. But
do they have...
The thing about DEI is that it's for the AIs, better utilization of cavalry, that they just classify all melee type cavalry as shock cavalry.
Do they utilize any sort of specialized weapons in regards to their homes or anything like that? I've heard that's a thing.
Well, I suppose it depends. At least in the case of shock cavalry, a lot of times shock cavalry units mightn't have shields and just big long spears. I don't know about the Lankyrie. I don't know about them. They're probably about as equipped as usual for Iberians. But again, they're gone, so not much we can comment on what they look like. These are some Adios Epones. They're a heavy Iberian cav unit. You can recruit them as Carthage, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, in later stage, your last level mercenary barracks can recruit them as, well, mercenaries. They're pretty damn good.
I bet they are, otherwise they would be recruited.
Yep. Yeah, Wadites, Celtiberiki, Mercenari.
Are they throwing more stones?
No, they're throwing javelins.
Oh, so now they decide to throw their javelins.
Well, see, these are javelin throwers. The Balearics are slingers who hurl stones. These guys are javelin men.
Oh, of course.
See, in the ancient world, there are different types of ammunition. Javelins, stones, and arrows. That's the basic idea. Yeah, my living skills get actually slaughtered.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's not good.
It's Qart-Hadasht. Yep, they're Qart-Hadasht as I thought.
Oh no, not Qart-Hadasht.
They're called Qart-Hadasht. Qart-Hadasht are kind of like light infantry men, who are called Qart-Hadasht because of their shield, called, I think, a Qitra, which is a small buckler shield. Yeah, the Scutari are called Scutari because of their big, long shields. Because scuta is a Latin plural of scutum, meaning shield. And usually,
sounds more like...
when people talk about the scutum, they're usually referring to the Roman shield, which was very big. Yes, my living
They must really love their shield so much to have them that big.
Yeah, they needed to protect the entire man's body.
I guess, yeah.
You know, sure, loads of different cultures like their big ass shields. Here are my reserves.
I bet they do.
Oh yeah, the Gauls, Celts liked using them.
But not the Romans.
The Romans liked using them. They just had different shapes.
No, I thought the Romans were all bloodthirsty and stuff.
Oh yeah, they're bloodthirsty as hell, but like they favoured having big long shields though.
I thought they were too prideful with shields.
They're not idiots.
I guess not, no.
Otherwise they wouldn't have conquered chunks of the world. Well, in fairness, you could kind of argue that the guys who were in charge of the Second Punic War were kind of idiots. Looking at you, Varro. He was the guy who is blamed for the disaster of the Battle of Cannon. When he decided...
more javelin throwing.
Huh?
More javelin throwing.
Yes, my javelin men are throwing their javelins.
Oh my god, so many javelins.
Yep, my mercenary will be finishing hoplites. And they're doing their job. A lot of bodies.
Yep, a lot of bodies. Sure, there's lots of... It's a big crowd over there. Makes you think there was a party going on.
A big old rave.
Sure, it must be doing something well.
Yeah, so as you can see here, I've got I'm moving my Carthaginian militia over to help protect this area, because it's getting stormed by enemies.
Well, that's important.
Yeah, my Iberian levies are here, and I guess I'm planning to move them out here. I'm trying to remember, it's been a while since I recorded all this. Actually didn't record, considering the cock-up.
Oh sure, they're missing out on all of the fun.
Yes, missing out on when I actually fought this bloody thing, rather than this replay of it. You know, I think I was probably sorting out lunch or something, and I forgot to record. I forgot to unpause OBS. So
oh man!
I just realised into the next battle I went shit. But yeah, anyways, so Iberian levies versus Iberian levies. Who's gonna win?
I don't know. Sure, that's the suspense of it all.
Ah, yeah. But yeah, so as you can see, it's a bit crazy, and probably not much comment on what's actually happening. Well,
I think crazy is an understatement.
Yeah.
I think it's more like fucking wild, man.
Oh yeah. So, as you can see, my general is enduring all this onslaught on his own, on his lonesome, with the sacred band.
They're like stone walls, very fixed in their positions, no moving once.
Well, that's the whole point of a phalanx, just to stay still and let the enemy come to you.
I know, I'm just making an observation.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of how the Greeks decided to fight and kill each other. You know, it wasn't until the Macedonians decided, you know what, let's just give them extra big spears.
Extra big spears.
Yeah,
okay.
The Sarissa pike, and give them smaller shields and lighter body armor. But sure, did well for themselves because they basically conquered a chunk of the east. I'm sure you know about Alexander the Great.
Yes, I am well aware of Alexander.
That was the kind
Great.
of military he used. You know, Macedonian pike phalanx, it's called. Anyway, so my Iberian levies are charging into these Iberian levies. Second man are holding well. My Libyan townsfolk. They're
very
charging.
sturdy they are.
Oh yeah, as I said, the Sacred Band are badass. The richest, you know, Phoenicians, the richest Phoenician citizens in Carthage, or some of the richest, you know, taking up arms for the mother city. So because they were rich, they could afford some pretty snazzy gear. because this is the time when it was up to people to acquire their own gear. You didn't normally have armies where their gear was provided for them. Rome was kind of an exception, but that's later than the period that we're in right now.
How come?
Because the period we're in right now, this is when Rome still fought with armies consisting of landowning citizens. So the idea of having a professional military, like what we see in the Marian troops, hasn't arrived yet.
When does it arrive?
In this game, I think around 100-ish turns in for the AI of Rome. They'll get the Marian reforms, which is kind of one of the traditional historical narratives, is when Rome decided to make a series of changes, but including getting rid of the property requirements for enlisting in the army and having your gear provided for you by the government.
Well, that's very handy.
Yep. In reality though, I think they kind of removed that requirement earlier in time.
Oh.
During, I think, the Second Punic War.
Why would they do that?
Because they kept losing men.
Oh. Okay then.
See, the thing with the Second Punic War is Rome lost most of the field battles, especially against Hannibal. Like I told Cannae, that was a really big example of that. My living spear and I'm moving in. The traditional narrative has it that Rome mustered around, say, nearly 90,000 troops, and probably around 10,000 or so survived.
Wow.
Yeah, against Hannibal's army that was smaller.
How much smaller?
Same narrative has it roughly, he had about 50,000 troops.
Only 50,000?
Yep.
Wow.
So, he had nearly half as much as the Romans.
And he still managed to hold them off. That's pretty impressive.
He won decisively.
I know, all the same.
Minimal casualties. Well, not minimal, but not tremendous casualties. But he was a very clever guy. And the Romans were quite impulsive.
I heard this rumor that he used to dissolve boulders along the Alps with something like vinegar or something. Is that true?
What was that?
Like, I heard there was this thing going around that said that he used to dissolve boulders with some form of vinegar or something, like when he crossed the Alps or something. Is that true?
I'm not sure, to be honest. The only claim I can talk about regarding his Alps journey is the claim about him losing most of his elephants, which I believe is not true.
Is there any way to disprove that?
Well, I think it's just, I'm not sure, but what I understand is while it's popularly claimed that most of Hannibal's elephants died on the journey, I think the reality was that most of them survived the journey. They just died early on in the Italian campaign.
And where's the evidence to support that?
My guess is probably the written accounts.
I suppose that makes sense. Although, I mean, like, people can make up anything they want in written accounts. And people...
That is true, but that's where you have to kind of vet these things, and I think our best source on the Punic Wars is Polybius, who wrote, I think, not long after the Third War. And so he probably would be able to talk to people who survived the Second War. And he's certainly considered a pretty good historian.
I suppose, yeah.
I'm trying to read his account, actually, his histories. Haven't gotten far into it though. Too lazy.
That's not like you.
Because I'm lazy.
Well, sure, if he's a reliable source, then I won't argue with it then.
Yeah, he's generally considered pretty reliable. Not perfect, but pretty good. But there are chunks of his text that are missing. So yeah. So overall, this is going pretty well. These guys are doing pretty well. It's Qatari and Gauls and just reserves, basically.
And they're definitely holding their own.
Yeah, well, they're pretty good units, particularly the Scutari,
How come?
because they're pretty damn. Their stats are good.
What do the Scutari specialize in, basically?
They're melee infantry, so they have swords, javelins, and big ass shields, and some decent armor.
And this armor was provided to them by Carthage.
No, they would have acquired it themselves.
Oh, okay, because I was under the impression that because of like the fact that they were rich citizens, they were able to acquire it from.
That's the Sacred Band.
Oh, right.
The Sacred Band, who are right here. And they provided the gear themselves because they were wealthy citizens.
Oh,
they could afford
right.
that gear.
Okay.
The Scutari are Iberian mercenaries. So they're basically just Iberian tribesmen who are skilled enough in combat, equipped with decent gear, who fight. Yeah. So they're just mercenaries. The Sacred Band are the guys we're talking about. The Sacred Band are hoplites. So you can see here they have a big rammed shield.
Yeah.
Aspis or Hopron. They're wearing body armor. Pretty heavy body armor.
I can definitely tell.
Generally it's a pectoral cuirass. And they've got what look to be a large amount of the helmets, but they look like Phrygian helmets.
Oh, the monkey is like a bloodbath over there.
Oh, yeah? Let's see now. They've got about 112 kills.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah? And they're exhausted.
They look more like 300 soldiers than anything else.
Referring to the 300 Spartans kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's because the Spartans fought as hoplites. And that's what the Sacred Band effectively are, hoplites.
Oh, okay.
The hoplites is a type of Greek, is a thing of Greek warfare. So it's kind of how the Greeks fought warfare at the time. And the hoplite phalanx warfare. That's very much a Greek style of warfare, and it was something that the Spartans are said to have done quite well at. This hoplite warfare. So those 300 Spartans were hoplites, would have been hoplites, defending the pass of Thermopylae.
Right, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I do believe the Spartan reputation for their military prowess is rather overblown.
Why overblown?
To my understanding, they weren't necessarily the big old badasses that they're popularly imagined to be. They were decent, pretty solid heavy infantry, but they weren't completely that special. I suppose what made them stand out was the fact that they had a full-time army, compared to most of the Greek states who, again, warfare was simply just citizens who took up arms whenever time came for it.
Back! Withdraw!
I think the whole agoge training thing was something that most Greek states did. I can't say too much about it exactly off the top of my head, but you can find, say, on r// Ask Historians on Reddit, some more detailed examinations of this stuff.
Okay.
But, you know.
Oh, what's going on there now?
Well, my Scutari are fighting the Qart-Hadasht here, and a bunch of my reservist troops are rushing in to attack these guys in the rear. With my Gauls.
There's one big party over there.
Yeah, and his flashy Gauls. I gotta say though, I really love the line of thorax they're wearing. That's because of it. I mentioned I was using a submod called Celtic Models Extravaganza.
Yeah.
And one of the things it does is it gives a lot of Celtic units the line of thorax body armor.
Fancy.
Yeah, well, the Linothorax is pretty neat.
Yeah?
It's made out of linen.
Ooh.
Hardened linen.
That's-
It's pretty light, but fairly durable. And
Never would have
fairly
imagined this.
inexpensive. You know, they think of it like the medieval gambeson in a way.
I have like a slight picture of it in my mind.
You know, the gambeson is like, you know, padded clothing of sorts.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's like that in a way. It's that kind of where it's non-metallic, organic material armor. So yeah. Then this battle is when I actually win. But the next battle, oof.
You going fucked up on that one.
Well, it wasn't necessarily that I fucked up. It's just the fact that this force was very battered, and the enemy army just attacked right after.
Thank God you had your most vulnerable.
Kinda, yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't have any time for this army to recover because it was in the same turn.
Really?
Yeah, well, again, here's the thing that might make this kind of into where I fucked up, because I'm using a submod that I actually tweaked myself, which increases the army cap per Imperium level. So basically that means the AI and myself can field more armies. But I think this gives more benefit to the AI.
Yeah, Creative Assembly are very good at AI building, I've heard these days.
That's actually quite the thing. It's well known that Total War AIs are dumb as rocks.
Well, you'd be surprised to learn that their AI for Alien Isolation is generally considered to be one of the greatest AIs ever constructed, actually, and it's done by the same. It's done by the same people who've done Total War, Creative Assembly.
Well, it's probably a different studio within CA, but yeah, I suppose the thing is the Total War AI is kind of different with all the shit it has to do.
I mean, like, it has to account for a whole lot of different variables.
Oh yeah,
you know.
that is the thing. So you can understand it's
with-
not an easy task, but it is just a well-known fact that Total War AI is a lot of times pretty dumb. And the thing is, the thing with DEI models, they can't directly mod the AI very much. I think a lot of it is very hard-coded. So they have to do things that kind of indirectly tinker the AI. Like the whole cavalry designation we talked about earlier.
It's not very good at cavalries.
I think it's traditionally not very good at handling cavalry, particularly in field battles. So I think what Cam, I think it was, who's one of the main developers for the mod, I think he did this, because he does a lot of that stuff, I think, but he mentioned about reclassifying the cavalry, and that seemed to improve the AI's usage of cavalry.
By how much?
A bit, I think. I think with this mod, the AI can be a little bit smart.
I guess it's somewhat of an improvement, I guess.
Yeah, again, it's an overhaul mod. They're trying to do what they can, but there's a lot of shit they can't do because it's hard-coded or very difficult to mod.
Oh, what's going on there now? I heard a
Well,
bell.
the battle is largely won. I think I'm getting in the routing phase.
Ooh, I love routing phases.
Well, yeah, I think traditionally that's actually been where most casualties are inflicted in a battle, I believe. Usually most of the killing occurs in the routing phase, as far as I understand.
You might as well just call it a slaughterhouse, the routing phase.
I suppose you could. The Libyan spearmen. And the Skitarian.
Roll call, roll call.
So you see that oval shield they're carrying?
Yeah?
That's what the name refers to.
Oh, that's where the name of the shield comes from.
Well, at least more like their name refers to that word skuta, referring to shield. So they're called, I think, because of their shields.
As you wish.
But the shield's name, I think that's more like us giving a modern take. Because one of the things I noticed is that a lot of terms that are kind of technical terms from like Greek or Latin referring to certain stuff like warfare, they're kind of, in the actual language, they're more just vague terms. Take, for example, the gladius, the word gladius. In our day and age, when we say gladius, we're referring to the Roman short sword. But in Latin, in the Roman times, I think the word gladius just meant sword. So any sword would have probably been a gladius.
Any type of swords.
Was a gladius in Latin. Well, that was one name for sword. They had a bunch of different words for sword. You had gladius, I think you had ensis. I think you had the word ferrum referring to iron. Could probably refer to something with an iron. Use iron as a word referring to sword.
What about spears?
I think the word for spear was hasta. In Latin.
Hasta.
Yeah, hasta. That's where the Romans had a unit called hastati, which means spearmen, except, well, in the start of the game, close victory. But at the start of the game they do have spears, but later on they'll ditch the spears and go for swords.
Makes sense, I suppose.
Despite still being called hastati. Anyways, so yes, that was a close victory. Very little commentary on what actually happened, but you know. So that's that. Now we'll see what happens next in the next battle. But yeah, Tingis, I tried to recruit a general to support it, but I realise I can't because it's under siege. So Tingis is left on its own. Yeah, is that looking for a new general to recruit? I usually prefer to pick people from the Barker dynasty, but looks like I chose this person from the Landowners Party.
What's the advantage there?
It just means you get a lot more skilled generals on your side, and it means in case you have a civil war, there's no good generals on the enemy side. Pick Sacred Band and Cavalry for this one. Gotta use a Sacred Band. And I get some hoplites. Or rather, I get one hoplite, and I get 2 Qart-Hadasht. And then leave it at that. My Shieldmaker has been built, so I can start upgrading the armor for all my troops. Yeah, I start to get a champion.
Ooh, champion.
Champions are good for training up your army.
I live to serve the mighty Carthage.
Technically they're called mercenary veterans for Carthage.
The mighty Carthage.
Yes.
I love all the different variations they do in repeating that phrase.
Yes.
Hilarious.
Yes, I recruit my Ligurian spears and Legata spears, or rather I did, and I scrapped them and replaced them with Qart-Hadasht. But yeah. And then this army's replenishing after suffering from the plague. That was why they were taking attrition early, because they were subjected to plague.
Ooh, that's rough.
Well, they've recovered now, so they're replenishing.
Ooh, as for more money. Money's always nice.
The Kesatani. I'm just looking over.
My friend, be welcome.
Yeah. Try to get non-aggression
I
with
cannot
them.
agree, even though the ale.
Well, fuck you then. I don't want your money anyway.
So we go to the next turn. Province of Mauritania, looks like.
Oh, that calls for another drink. 2 drinks, actually.
Well then, so as you can see, I'm surveying everything.
It's a good thing this isn't alcohol, or I'd be super drunk right now.
Following the Irishman stereotype. So I put the champion into my faction leader's army. Start recruiting more troops, it looks like. Some Numidian cavalry.
Stereotypes if it's done. It's not giving into stereotypes if you're obligated to do it.
We're probably obligated because it is our stereotype.
maybe it's I'm obligated because your hidden agents are shit.
I'm recruiting the Midian cavalry for her. As I survey what else to go for. Well, I actually decided to not recruit those cavalry. I think I just probably move her up and then I start recruiting again. It's kind of handy to do that because recruitment stops their movement. Yeah, I trespass in the Carpatani. Move in to capture Carthage. So let me see now. Look over what to recruit: Numidian cavalry, Carisi, and 2 Balearic slingers. That's all I can recruit for Balearic slingers. I can get mercenary ones, and I can just get them from the mercenary barracks when it's leveled up. Which, as of the last session, I think I'm close to having those next level mercenary barracks.
I see. Which
gives me a few units. The Gustai, which are naked Gallic spears. Yeah. I didn't think there was much hope in that.
That guy isn't even facing anyone. Sure, he's so desperate for battle, he'll battle the ship. Or the sea, or whatever the hell he's looking at.
That army's looking over at Tingis. They're besieging Tingis. But yeah, give her the skill to assassinate. And here comes the Battle of Tingis, where I try my best to defend the city.
He's not even facing anyone. He's so desperate for battle, he'll battle anything.
Right. And that'll be it. Okay.
Alright.
So here we are. The defense of Tingis from the Turds. Again, the bloody Turds.
Ooh, it's big.
Look at the fucking ladders they have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm counting 9 ladders. Yeah, 9 ladders. So then what the AI seems to do is they get 1 extra ladder for siege battles than the player does.
Really?
Yeah, usually the player, each set of ladders you build is about 2 ladders, but for the AI it's 3.
How many ladders do you usually get?
About 2 per set.
Only 2 per set?
Whereas the AI gets 3 per set.
Well, that's just not fair now.
Well, in fairness, the AI is prone to getting advantages, even in DEI, because the thing is, some of the mechanics that affect the player, like population, you probably see when I'm recruiting, you'll see all these little population figures and stuff. The AI is immune to that, as far as I understand.
Again, that's just not fair.
I suppose, but I believe there's just only so much they can do on mod, so I think the AI just can't deal with it. So
I guess.
Again, I think they probably would like to have it apply these things, but it generally can't, so...
I'm done with questioning it.
But yeah, so my Libyan javelins are all along the wall, throwing their javelins. Unfortunately, my garrison isn't really much of anything decent. It's 1 usual Carthaginian militia, and a few Libyan spearmen. About 3 spearmen and a shitload of Libyan townsfolk, which are shite.
Oh. Well, that's not good.
Townsfolk are probably okay at best at taking on weak skirmishers, and maybe rear charging enemies in a position to do morale damage, but that's about it.
Well, let's hope they don't, like, get a handful of that stuff then.
But, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, the odds weren't very good here. Like, maybe I could have done something a little different and maybe not concentrate so much on the walls, but yeah.
How so?
Well, see, the thing is, I tend to, whenever I fight siege defense battles, I almost always put my troops right by the walls to fight. And I wonder, maybe not completely with this one, but I have partially wondered if that's always the best strategy.
I mean, like, I'm
maybe-
no tactician, but I think, based on geographical terms, it might always be best to spread your warriors out more equally or something like that. It gives them more ground to cover, and also, like, yeah, you may have less soldiers dealing with like a certain amount of people on one side, but at least you'd be more spread out, I suppose. Do you know what I mean?
The idea is that, see, the thing is that sometimes I do wonder, especially for certain types of garrisons, they might actually work better at being in other areas, letting the AI go spread out around the settlement and fighting. But yeah, again, it depends. Again, I do find that DEI garrisons are a little bit harder, are a bit quite weak in DEI a lot of the time. Garrison troops. Like vanilla, they're usually pretty strong, but DEI, I find them to be pretty weak a lot of the time. I guess it depends how you utilise them.
Who would you go
Greek
with
factions,
instead?
they have some pretty good garrisons because they're basically low hoplites.
Who would you have gone with instead?
Your garrison?
If you had to choose, yeah.
Well, I do find Greek-style garrisons to be some of the best because they're very heavy on hoplites. I noticed that particularly when I played as Egypt, and even the Seleucids had some pretty good garrisons because of that. You know, they have like a native militia and then like Greek militia, spears, whatever, and they both function as hoplites, and they're both pretty good in that regard. But yeah, Rome's garrison is okay. They get like Italian swordsmen, which are pretty good. Italian town guard, which are mostly trash. They have like Italian slingers, which are not great. And they have like Italian cavalry, which is pretty okay.
Okay.
That's just the way, that's my experience. So apparently, according to one of the devs, the Rome's garrisons are actually quite good.
Yeah.
That's what they said in Discord, and I was like, kind of questioning that a little bit. I think it wasn't in Discord, it was in the Total War Facebook group with one of the devs, and Cam was talking about this stuff. You know, he's one of the developers. Cam is in the Total War Facebook group, and it's always interesting to have his little insights and stuff.
Oh, sure. When you're one of the developers, it's always handy.
Oh yeah, you know, I like it whenever he comes and things, be it historical information or just explaining how DEI does stuff. Because I think he also does a lot of the historical research.
Oh yeah, because historical research is important. You of all people should know that.
Well, especially for this mod, considering the fact that their whole thing is that units, for the most part, have to at least kind of have it be historically plausible. That's how I describe it. They have to be historically plausible, if nothing else. Like, in fact, one of my assignments I was doing for Classics and Popular Culture, I was assessing this mod. And it's interesting in my research, partly relying on what they provided as sources that justify certain units. Like, so as an example, like I think of is for Egypt, they have a unit called Lino Catapraktoi, or Quilted Cataphracts. Cataphract is like a heavy horseman where both the rider and the horse are covered in armour. And Egypt has a version where they're covered in a quilted armour, like linen. You know, they talk to that linothorax sort of thing.
Double time!
And there's a historical passage by an author where he talks about how the king, I think it was Ptolemy II, got a bunch of horsemen from Greece and had them equipped in quilted armour for them and their mounts.
At speed!
And like that seems a lot like the linen cataphracts that DEI has. Anyways, so yeah, you're just seeing here my Libyans are getting demolished here.
See, the gates got demolished.
Actually, no, my gates are okay. It's just the fact that because my units that are routing are leaving the settlement, that triggers the gates to open up. But the AI forces, I don't think, can go through it unless they actually have to fight their way into the gates.
Oh.
So the gates either have to be captured by the AI, or they have to burn down the gates themselves to enter, even whilst they're open, like this, for my guys to flee. It's kind of weird, but that's just the way the game is designed.
Inconsistency.
I suppose some of it's just pure limitations about what can be done, and other things are just like, well, in fairness, the thing about Rome 2 was it was a disaster at launch. You know the way AC Unity was a disaster at launch?
Yeah, and then they sent out a bunch of patches that improved stuff slightly.
This is the same thing for this game.
Oh, how big were those patches actually? Like for this game?
They made about 20 or so patches over the number of years.
Wow. Okay. How many? Do you know how many gigabytes worth?
I don't know.
Okay, because
See,
like
when I got the game, it was like a couple of years after it came out. So a lot of the major game-breaking bugs and shit were already mended by that stage.
Because I'm thinking back to Unity. At first launch, their patch was considered to be the largest patch ever applied for video game. Because I think it stood somewhere around like a 40 gigabyte patch for the game, basically. Yeah. Because
well, again, I think Unity came after this game came out, so.
Yeah, so it was like an even more like sort of serious situation for them, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm also sure that Rome didn't have a scenario where faces were displaying skeletons or weird sort of faces.
No, but you had all sorts of other weird shit going on.
Can you give some examples?
One notable example I can think of is when ships were landing on shore. They would bug out, and instead of properly stopping on the shore and allowing the troops to disembark, it would still continue moving through the shore, almost going underground. Into like the ground, basically.
Oh no.
That was one example that people noticed. I think AI quirks, and I think the game still hasn't been 100% fixed, but it's mostly been fixed. Yeah. So this game was a disaster at launch and has become quite a solid game, but a lot of Total War fans still quite burned by that.
When was it released?
2013?
2013, okay. It would have been about a year before Alien Isolation came out.
What came out?
Alien Isolation, another Creative Assembly
yes.
game.
I just didn't hear what you were saying. Alien Isolation, yeah.
Yeah, that was... Yeah, the guys who made Total War, they actually made Alien Isolation.
I'm aware. I don't know what, like, and there are different studios who do different things, but yeah. I'm aware
No,
that...
I think it was... I don't think they have different studios. I think it's all just one development studio.
No, there are a few CA studios. Like there's CA Sophia, who did, I think, the Rise of the Republic DLC for this game. And they also did Total War Saga Troy. There are definitely a few different teams in CA who do different projects. Like, there is the team that does the Warhammer series. Those are very controversial. And And then there are the teams that do a lot of the different historical titles.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. Like, it doesn't seem to say which sort of specific studio in general made Alien Isolation. Like, all it says is just Creative Assembly, basically. So, yeah.
Again, I'd say they're probably not as big as Ubisoft, but still pretty big.
Oh, no, because, like, Ubisoft has, like, development studios everywhere, like Montreal,
Singapore.
Bucharest,
yeah, there's like Montreal, I think there's Singapore.
Budapest, I think, too.
Budapest. Like, I remember, I think it's the Singapore studio that tends to be quite good at doing like water textures. I believe. I think they did Black Flag water textures, if I recall correctly.
Let's see. I'm gonna look it up now.
Forward!
Apparently Ubisoft in some sort of controversy at the moment.
Like, it was, like, 4 was developed by Montreal, Milan, and Kiev. Like, Kyiv.
Kiev. Yeah, it's in
Kiev,
Ukraine.
yeah.
You could also know it's also known as Kiev, but I think that's the Russian name for it. So a lot of Ukrainians would prefer to be called Kiev, because that's the Ukrainian name. But yeah, I was reading about Ashraf Ismail is out of Ubisoft.
Yeah, I heard of all the allegations against him, actually.
Yeah. Also, Darby McDevitt left Ubisoft.
Engage!
And he's the guy who was one of the main writers for Black Flag.
I know, yeah. And I heard that he was very dissatisfied with how the franchise was going, actually. Like, it seemed to, like,
Well,
I think he was...
he was one of the few who cared about AC lore.
And you notice that it was steering off to a wildly different direction. Like, it was focusing less on stealth mechanics and more or less on RPG elements. Actually.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is the fact that, from my understanding, I think there was no official lore keeper in Ubisoft.
Oh no, like...
There was nobody whose job it was to oversee Assassin's Creed lore and make sure that whatever they did wouldn't trample on the lore.
Here's an example of that, actually. You know that whole plot with, you know that whole scenario with Juno at the end of Assassin's Creed 3?
Yes.
Where, like, she starts to enact her plan and stuff like that, and you see a brief snippet of her in Black Flag. Yeah, that never gets... Yeah, it turns out that never actually got resolved in any of the games. Her storyline got resolved in a comic series instead.
Yes, I vaguely recall. I think they also dealt with like Desmond having a son or something.
Exactly, yeah. None of that is brought up in the games. It's like your major cliffhanger from Assassin's Creed 3, and it only gets resolved in a comic instead. Not to discount comics. I know comics are a great...
It's fine in that regard, but it is... I think even I, who kind of likes the idea about multimedia lore kind of stuff, at least, you know, even that seems a bit like you're shoving an important plot point, an important narrative. You're shoving all that into a comic book.
Yeah, like, it might work with others. Like, if it was not the main storyline.
The comics would probably not be nearly as well known or popular as the games. And so I feel like that doesn't help how it's being perceived.
Like, I think multimedia can work if it's dealing with a storyline that's not really considered like the A plot or something like that. If it was like maybe a side story or just something that happened off on the side, then I think it could be a little bit more possible, but not with like something that's treated as a major cliffhanger in your major storyline. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So my Libyan spearmen are hanging on by a thread.
Hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, they're the only unit left, it seems. They're fighting, they're exhausted.
They're not long for this world, I'll tell you that much. Oh, nice sense of bloodbath.
Yeah. The Liberian levies are breaking. But yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so like, he left Ubisoft. Of course, Ash had to leave because of his little scandal. But it seems like Ubisoft have landed themselves in hot water fairly recently, though. Due to, I think, like systematic mistreatment of their staff or something.
I think they might have also mentioned crunch as well. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, the whole controversial crunch time. I think that's something CD Projekt Red have kind of gotten into a bit of trouble over.
And Naughty Dog as well.
Yeah, I think the idea is that it's one of those little controversial ideas in game development about.
It's like basically overworking your employees, basically.
Oh yeah, sure, that's the thing. The anime industry is notorious for that.
Rockstar, I think Rockstar Games, like they were notorious for doing that sort of stuff with their older projects. I think recent reports have said that they've started to like cool off on that a little bit, but I've heard that like I don't know, like it's still a problem. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure, but
Oh yeah, but yeah.
like there was this like Ratchet. I've heard recently. It just came out today that Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, that new Ratchet & Clank game that's coming out tomorrow actually, it was made by Insomniac Games, and Insomniac Games are probably one of the few game development studios that doesn't do any crunch at all. Like, it just came out that there was like absolutely no crunch for this game whatsoever, and because of the fact, and it's a lot of people are calling it impressive because it's like a huge change in direction, and it's just like a huge breather because like they're not working their employees to the bone or anything like that, but also because it's like it's living up to the best of the PS5 hardware as far as I'm aware. I won't know for sure because I don't have a PS5 myself, and I probably won't get one for a long time, but I mean, like, for a game that is running on that sort of hardware to have no crunch whatsoever, it's pretty much a big deal in the game industry these days, actually.
But yeah, basically I think both the gaming and anime industry seem to be pretty notorious for the fact that they love to overwork their employees. Like, it's one of those notorious things in the anime industry, the animators are like almost dropping like flies. A lot of them keep quitting and leaving because they just get so burned out because they're overworked and poorly paid. I think most anime studios pay their animators per, I think it's per frame, rather than an actual wage.
Oh jeez.
I think the only studio that I know of that doesn't do that is Kyoto Animation. They pay their animators a legitimate wage, I believe.
Yeah, that sort of like negligence happened quite a lot of Telltale games actually, and it was one of, and like it's the only instance I can think of where it actually came back to bite them in the ass, and it actually ended up resulting in their closure in 2018. Because like on the day of their closure, they basically laid off just like over 200 of their employees, and they were given absolutely no warning or severance whatsoever.
Yeah, just seeing here, I think what I remember here is what I was hoping to try and do is have these guys move to around here where I had towers that could shoot down on the enemy, potentially. It was a gamble, but my hope was that I might be able to kind of lure them towards here where I had towers that could shoot down on them. This was my plan rationale, as well as trying to let them recover. I don't think that worked out. It didn't work out clearly, but yeah.
You win some, you lose some.
Yeah, that was the thing. I think what happens, those towers start to shoot.
It's like one big bloodbath over there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the towers start shooting at me.
Well, that's just not fair.
And then they captured the gate, which meant the tower will fire on me. Hidden. Yeah,
Well, now they just got nowhere else to run.
Yeah. Again, the idea was to have something like this, the tower just shoot down on these guys. the Clona Arios, the general bodyguard.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's nasty.
These little towers sit there, winning decisively, of course. And they're getting slaughtered.